Election Day is tomorrow. Barring something extraordinary happening over the next 24 hours, the 2024 presidential race will be one of the closest in American history. As of November 4th, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are exactly tied in the national polling average, according to a grand total of 339 polls tracked in Decision Desk HQ's average. Of course, we know that national polling doesn't really matter. It's the Electoral College, and more specifically, the all-important race to 270 electoral votes that decides the presidency. There are 7 key battlegrounds on the map, marked down as toss-ups here. With every other state likely to vote in one direction, these are the only 7 states you really need to pay attention to on election night. If any of these safe, likely, or lean states for either candidate come into play, we're looking at a landslide scenario for the other party. Now, like I said at the start of the video, national polls don't hold as much weight this cycle because of the uncertainty surrounding this year's Electoral College bias. Nate Silver's forecast estimated that Harris would likely need to win the popular vote by at least 2 to 3 points to have at least a 50-50 chance at reaching 270 electoral votes. So current national polling suggests she's vastly underperforming that benchmark. Now let's find out how she's doing across the key battleground states. Starting in the Upper Rust Belt core trio, colloquially referred to as the WIMPA states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that hold the keys to the White House for both candidates. Even if Trump or Harris sweep each of the Sun Belt battlegrounds, they would still need at least one of the WIMPA states to hit 270 electoral votes. That's especially noteworthy because they have voted together as one in every presidential election since 1988. Backing Democrats in all but the 2016 cycle, where Trump flipped them red by less than a single point each. People often forget that had Hillary Clinton managed to hold just these 3 states in her column that year, Trump would never have been elected president. Likewise, when Biden flipped the trio back into the Democratic corner, Pennsylvania by a point, Michigan by 3, and Wisconsin by less than a point. Had Trump held them in the Republican column, he'd be serving a second term as we speak. Now in 2024, they again hold the keys to the White House. A sweep of all 3 would be enough for Harris to hit exactly 270 electoral votes. She could feasibly lose Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, and still win the Electoral College. That makes it no surprise she's trained almost all of her resources here in this region down the stretch. In terms of the polling here in 2024, we saw Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris consistently appear stronger in this region than in any of the Sun Belt states. While I have generally been skeptical of Harris's ability to draw the same appeal among older, white, working-class voters as Scranton Joe back in 2020, it appears now more likely than ever that racial depolarization will be the story of this cycle. While Black and Hispanic voters trend right, white voters, specifically women and college-educated young people, are moving left. That lends to the Democrats' chances in the whiter Midwest, where we saw that Ann Selzer Iowa poll that had Harris up by 3 points sent shockwaves through political circles. While I obviously remain very skeptical of Harris's chances in Iowa, it does point to a broader trend that could help her, particularly in Wisconsin. For those who've been following this channel throughout the cycle, I've been consistently more skeptical of Harris's chances in Wisconsin than the general public, even when she was polling ahead by several points. Wisconsin has been the site of 2 of the largest polling misses underestimating Trump. In 2016, Clinton led by 6.5 points in the final poll average, only to lose the state by 0.7%. Then in 2020, Biden led by a similarly large margin, yet held the state by just 0.7%. Wisconsin is also the whitest and most rural state in the core Rust Belt trio. If Trump overperforms among white working-class voters, like in 2016, Wisconsin will likely be the front line for that shift. Yet again, though, racial depolarization could point to the complete reversal of that scenario, and according to the 538 poll average, which weights for recency and pollster accuracy, it's Harris who leads Trump by 0.8%, a lead she has yet to give up since taking over as the Democratic nominee. Granted, this margin is incredibly slim, and a typical polling error could easily flip the outcome when all is said and done. But it's clear here that Harris has the edge, and if the polls are right, Wisconsin will tilt ever so slightly in her favor. Over in Michigan, if I had to name a must-win for Harris on this map, I would probably pick this one. It's fundamentally the bluest of the trio, having voted to the left of both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania in 2016, and then again in 2020 as it backed Biden by 2.8%. Democrats have also achieved strong down-ballot victories across the state over the years, and the state party infrastructure is the strongest as well. So again, I find it extremely difficult to see Harris hitting 270 without carrying Michigan's 15 electoral votes with her. The poll average has her leading by an identical margin as in Wisconsin, with a slightly higher vote share at 47.9% to 47.1%. Again, she has yet to give up this lead since her nomination, though the margin is narrower than it has been in months. Nevertheless, Michigan joins Wisconsin in the tilt Democrat category here on our map, which lifts her electoral tally up to 251, 19 shy of the presidency, with the 19 votes in Pennsylvania as our next stop on the map. The Keystone State is the most pivotal battleground in the 2024 election cycle. Nate Silver's forecast model assigns Pennsylvania the highest probability of being the tipping point state, with a 34% chance of pushing Trump or Harris past 270 electoral votes. A victory in Pennsylvania would significantly boost either Harris or Trump's chances to around 90%. The available data suggests a slight edge for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Party registration trends have shifted strongly towards the Republicans since 2020, and early voting patterns have not been promising for the Democrats, with particularly strong turnout in the Republican-leaning rural areas. Current polling also favors Trump slightly. He took the lead 3 weeks ago and has maintained it. According to 538, he is ahead by a marginal 0.2%, a lead so narrow that it essentially indicates a statistical tie. Given the sheer volume of polling conducted in Pennsylvania, more than any other state, its pivotal role is again underscored. And although the race remains highly uncertain, Trump's current, albeit slight advantage, places Pennsylvania in the tilt Republican category for now, so that keeps Trump in the race here as we head to the more Republican-friendly Sunbelt battlegrounds now. The electoral environment appears most favorable to Trump in these states right now. Let's start in North Carolina, which is always competitive, yet has consistently held up as a Republican-leaning state over the last decade. The Tar Heel state has voted Republican in every federal election since 2008, whether for president or U.S. Senate, by less than 6 points on every occasion. I'd label it as Michigan's counterpart in that it is a must-win for Trump. It's the only one of the 7 battlegrounds he carried back in 2020. And while demographic trends might suggest a leftward shift, early voting data this cycle indicates that for the first time in decades, registered Republicans are on pace to outvote Democrats as minority turnout lags across the state. The latest polling average here has Trump leading by a nearly identical margin as he carried the state with in 2020, 1.2%. The former president is sitting at 48.4% right now over Harris's 47.2%. He has maintained a consistent lead of around a point or less since mid-August. Returning to our electoral map, with North Carolina's slight tilt toward Trump, he overtakes Harris in the race to 270 electoral votes, leading her 254 to 251. With only 33 electoral votes left to allocate across our 3 remaining toss-up states, the battle for the presidency remains on a knife edge. Moving down the coast to Georgia, this was the closest state in the 2020 election. Biden became the first Democrat to carry the Peach State since Bill Clinton, winning by a razor-thin margin of 0.2%, with 49.5% to Trump's 49.3%, and a raw vote margin of only about 12,000 votes. This win was primarily driven by record-high turnout and substantial margins among black voters in and around Atlanta. Yet here in 2024, the polling crosstabs indicate that Trump is up around 20 percentage points among black voters on average compared to his 2020 performance. Coupled with an expected decrease in black voter turnout, these factors place Trump in a strong position to reclaim Georgia. In fact, the conditions here could arguably be more favorable to him than those in North Carolina. And that is reflected in the overall top-line average here that has Trump ahead by 1.3%. He has consistently led by a point or more for about a month now. And so returning to our map, Georgia also finds itself in the tilt Republican column. That's enough to give Trump exactly 270 electoral votes. While we've discussed Harris's most efficient route to victory through the core Rust Belt trio, Trump's path hinges on holding North Carolina, flipping Georgia, and winning Pennsylvania. The importance of Pennsylvania cannot be overstated. If Harris manages to secure Michigan and Wisconsin while Trump holds Georgia and North Carolina, then even the results in Arizona and Nevada wouldn't sway the overall election. It would all come down to Pennsylvania. This is also critical because the races in Arizona and Nevada probably won't be called until later in the week. Arizona was the second closest contest in the 2020 election. Biden narrowly carried the Grand Canyon state by 0.3%, with a raw vote margin of less than 11,000 votes. When people talk about the 2020 election being won by only thousands of votes, this is one of the states that they mean. Along with Georgia and Wisconsin, Trump came within 45,000 cumulative votes across those three states from flipping the Electoral College outcome in his favor. The latest polling average here has Trump leading Harris by his widest margin at 2.5 points, garnering a 49% vote share here, which is his highest mark since 538 began tracking these surveys. Harris has not led in a single one of the surveys included in this average since October 21st. So returning to our Electoral College map, Arizona actually finds itself in the lean Republican category. That leaves us with our final battleground, Nevada. Republicans are in a stronger position to flip the silver states than they've been in over 2 decades. Remember, Trump lost Nevada by 2.4% to Hillary Clinton, and then by the same margin to Joe Biden in 2020. This indicates that the state shifted to the right relative to the nation since Biden won the national popular vote by a larger margin than Clinton. Then more recently, in the 2022 midterm elections, Republican Joe Lombardo flipped the governor's office, while for the first time in decades, Republicans secured more votes for the U.S. House across Nevada's 4 congressional districts. These trends have continued into 2024 as the early vote in Nevada has simply been abysmal for Democrats. Republicans outvoted Democrats in the early vote by 4 points, a complete reversal from the trend we usually see here. And the polling doesn't look much better, as Trump leads by 0.3% here, garnering 47.7% to 47.4%. It's worth noting that the polls in Nevada have been relatively accurate over recent cycles compared to other competitive states. Over the last 4 presidential cycles, Nevada has shown one of the lowest average discrepancies in polling accuracy and has actually tended to underestimate Democratic performance. Simply put, these aren't the numbers Harris needs to feel hopeful in her chances of a turnaround come Election Day. So Nevada goes in the tilt Republican category, completing our electoral map. If the election were held today and the latest polling averages prove to be 100% accurate, then Trump would win the Electoral College with 287 electoral votes ahead of Harris's 251, as the presidency comes down to just 0.2 of a percentage point in Pennsylvania. As always, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think of this map and suggest any other videos or topics you'd like to see in the future. That does it for today's video though. Shout out to my channel members in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.